Good morning, Will.
Good morning, Rich. How you doing, brother?
I am doing fantastic.
Excellent, excellent.
Hopefully, this cold I've had is about to run its course.
Yeah, let's hope so. Summertime colds are not fun. You
No,
know,
they are not.
wintertime ones aren't fun either, but at least you expect it.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, it's been rough.
Yeah,
let me make sure my Wi-Fi is turned off so we're not draining the limited bandwidth out here in the county.
yeah. We don't want to lose you again there, brother. The you must have gotten you got what, fiber optic out there now,
We do, yeah.
because it's been
Thank
much
God.
more reliable.
Yes, sir, it is. All right. I know you
So,
got as always, you got a great show. My name is Rich
uh-huh.
Brown, co-host, co-founder of the American Warrior Society and the American Warrior Show, America's leading self-defense podcast. And I'm joined by my good friend, Mr. Will Wood.
Good morning, brother Rich. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic.
Awesome.
And for those that are in the know that every Monday morning, Will brings to you some economic and financial indicators that you need to have on your radar screen if you want to keep yourself and your family better prepared for the times ahead. Because I think we got some turbulent waters coming, don't we, Will?
I do agree with that, brother. And here's the thing. So why do two self defense guys talk about this stuff, right? Well, it's because you want to be prepared to protect your family. Should there be a home invasion? Should there be something down at the gas station, the local Walmart? Fill in the blank wherever you might be when the bad man shows up, right? Well, the bad man can show up for the budget and the home finances and your job and all that stuff too. And the more you know about what could happen based on things we're seeing today, the better you can prepare yourself and your family for that situation eventuality. I will say at this point,
Yeah.
as you say, I agree. We're heading into turbulent times, and not just economically, definitely politically, and it's happening all over the world. We saw it with the election in France yesterday; they went far left, and same with the UK. And I think a lot of that is um, people are fed up in general, worldwide, and it's just going to get worse here as things go along, as this overall debt crisis matures, which is going to take years. It isn't going to happen in an election cycle.
No, I agree with you. It's going to take time, and we'll see how. Hopefully they'll sort it all out by 2034.
Yeah, hopefully I would like to retire at some point.
Johnny King is on. Says, good morning, gentlemen from Kentucky. John Shriver is on from Yukon, Oklahoma. He has coin number 1919. What's his coin number stuff
Coin
about, Will?
number thing, you know what I'm doing is I'm still remodeling down here, so my coin, I know it's on my desk here. Coin gives you access to the American Warrior Society coined members area, which the big one there is the training vault, brother.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important part to start with in the training vault is the assessment.
Yes.
Start right there. Find out where you're lacking at, because we all tend to work on the things we're good at, right? I
Mm-hmm.
like to shoot pistol because I'm better at that than rifle. Well, that tells you should probably work. I should probably be working my rifle a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And you got medical, you got ground fighting, you got ground combatives with the pistol, you've got rifle, pistol, shotgun, you've got medical, which is often overlooked because the old question, you carry how many spare mags and no tourniquets.
Right.
And
And even so, you carry tourniquets but no chest seals.
exactly, and no gauze, no quick clot. And we were just out the other night at a Fourth of July fireworks thing. It was delayed because of weather, and I just grabbed my little backpack that I keep by the bed in the nightstand, and just tossed that in with everything else I was taking. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean something's going to happen to my family, but it could be somebody else.
Yeah, you put a seatbelt on every time you crawl into the cockpit of your plane, don't you?
Yes, that's what the book says. Absolutely, we do for sure. So,
Uh,
yeah, let's welcome some more folks on here. See, Alan Kelly is on
absolutely.
from Occupied Virginia.
Yeah, Dr.
Um,
Fuller is on.
I see his
Sir.
books was making the rounds over the last week or so.
And it's on Audible, by the way, now. So
Awesome.
if you're one of those people that don't necessarily need to read, you're not as tactile as perhaps I am. You're fine with reading via Audible, which I love. By the way, just finished a great book yesterday on
Or if
Audible.
you're like me and the big words give you trouble,
Yeah,
Audible.
yeah, not saying.
Just saying.
Throttle jockeys are not known for their intellect. Let's be honest.
No.
But you can check out Dr. Fuller's book on Audible, Painting Over Rust. And he's got a new book coming out. Matter of fact, I will be interviewing Dr. Fuller about his new book. It might be this Friday, Dr. Fuller, to check.
Awesome.
Bruce Hoisington is on from Michigan, coin number 481. Ted Leonard says, coined boomer here. Happy to be here. What does Dr. Fuller say?
It says, does coin membership get you Rich's home number asking for a friend? No, you don't have to do that. I'm typing as we speak, Dr. Fuller.
Yeah, Dr. Fuller's been up here to the farm a few times. Will, you're lacking. You need to get down here, brother.
Well, we're doing a Civil War trip this summer. We're putting it together now, so I will be in contact about that.
Okay, yeah, come on down to that. I think there are like 0 Civil War battlefields in Wisconsin, but we got a bunch of them here in Tennessee.
Yes, yes, you do. So we're the daughter and I are putting that trip together right now.
Awesome. Tony is on. Good morning, folks. Without much further ado, my good friend, Mr. Will, let's get into it. What's this fear and
Let's
greed
do it.
index doing?
So that's it's slowly inching upward. It's still technically neutral, as you can see there, with a 54 on CNN's Fear Greed Index. But it has been slowly coming up. I'm going to say 2-3 weeks ago, it was hovering in the 40s. Now we're in the 50s. About ready to move. If it goes up much today, we're going to move into greed. So, that's the overall mood of the market right now. A lot of that has to do with the chart that's underneath this, and that is 10-year U.S. government bond yields. Yields have been going down. So that drives money out of the bond market and has to go somewhere if it wants to make money, and money always wants to make money. So it's going into the stock market. And I failed to put the dates on here, but this chart goes back to, I'm going to say latter part of last year. Yields have basically been trending downward. And so that drives money out of the bond market, into the stock market, into other things. It's also why I've seen mortgage rates come down somewhat since then. Not enough to make any differences. We're going to dig into here with a few things with the housing market. And we're seeing more and more mainstream articles about how the housing market is teetering on the precipice, as one article said. So we'll see how that shakes out. We know certain areas are certainly overbought, Florida, Boise, Austin, so on and so forth. So this helps the government out as well, because now they're not paying as much interest on the national debt, which is ballooning, which we're going to get into today as well. A little update on that, and in a different angle, we're going to look at it. So that helps them out there. So the government is also incentivized to try and drive rates back down. And that's where you get your yin and yang. You get the Treasury versus the Federal Reserve, and we'll see who wins that fight in the end.
Oh, fantastic. Will Rose is on from Missouri, coin number 2269. Derek Gibson is on. Says, good morning from North Carolina. Good morning, Derek. Good morning, Will. Thank you guys for being on. Please like and hit that share button. What is a summary of the Fed Chair Jerome Powell's J-Dogs comment?
So if you're on X, this Kobisi letter, I think I pronounced that right, is a great follow on there for stuff. So old J-Dog gave a speech on July 2nd. I think this was actually given somewhere in Europe, but so these were 7 points that Kobisi letter thought was important. I thought instead of just looking at this stuff, let's look at it in the context of what the Fed is looking at, because the Fed is the one that controls how much money is out there and what the interest rates are. And let's look at it from their perspective. And I even learned a few things in doing the research for this. So let's dig in here. So the first point that they brought out of this was J-Dog said the trend of disinflation appears to be resuming. So let's remind everyone, disinflation is, you still have inflation, it's just lower inflation. So when we went from 9% inflation to 3% inflation, that's disinflation. Prices are still going up, just not as fast. Okay. And if we go to the next one, we'll look at a chart. This is the CPI year over year number from Bureau of Labor Statistics. And you can see there in early 2024, inflation actually went back up just a little bit. And now
this is what is this, a 5-year look back?
This goes back to middle of 2019.
Yeah.
So we can see the big spike there we all experienced, and then it's coming back down. Okay. So it came down and then it went back up just a little bit. Now, some of that is what we call base effects, because you're looking at a year back. And so what happens a year before makes a difference to what this number is, right? So we're starting to see the trend of disinflation continue. So that's what J-Dog's looking at. So if one of us was in the big chair, it'd be like, well, the trend of disinflation is continuing. So should I do something or should I wait?
Mhm.
Right. So, one report, so to speak, is a point. Two
Mhm.
is a line, three makes a trend. So as patient as he has been, my guess is he's going to continue to be patient. It's moving the general direction he wants, and he doesn't want to let his foot off the brake too soon.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Yeah, these can't be emotional decisions at this point.
absolutely. And he said, as he said, the trend of disinflation is resuming, meaning, yes, it did end there for a while. And now it's continuing back down. Now, bear in mind, we're still running, I believe it's 3.1% on the CPI. So still 50% above the target of 3.
Mhm.
So we look at it and go, wow, inflation's down quite a bit from where it was. But if you look at it from his standpoint, it's still 50% too high.
Mm.
Okay, so something to keep in mind. Of course, the politicians are like, "Well, we brought it from 9 to 3," and
Oh
he's going,
God.
"That's great, comma, it's
Yeah.
still not good enough."
No.
Okay,
William Hollenbeck is on. Good morning, sir. This is good morning. Guys, please like and hit that share button. Comment if you got a question for Will here. So what has to happen for old J Dog to be more confident?
well, let's talk about that. So he says here he needs to be more confident before reducing rates. Um, and combined with this, the Fed doesn't see 2% inflation this year or next year. So going back to the first part of that, that's when they say that's their target, that's their maximum target, right?
Mhm.
Now that's they don't want to go too far underneath that either. So, they walk that fine line. So let's think about that though. There's people out there yelling and screaming, "Oh, we need lower rates now." And let's remember it wasn't but 7, 8 months ago that many in the market were expecting 7 rate cuts this year. 7 quarter point rate cuts. So almost a 2% drop in
Mhm.
interest rates this year. Well, that sure hasn't happened. And look how much inflation has come down. It came down from, probably 6 at the beginning of the year. I can't remember the exact number for sure, but 6 down to 3 didn't change a thing.
Mhm.
So if they're not seeing 2% inflation until they doesn't see it this year or next, so that would presume 2027. I'm sorry,
Oh wow.
2026. Apologies.
I was just say, whoa.
It's math in public is hard. So we're looking at a long time before we're going to see any significant change based on what he sees now. Okay.
What do you think
Um,
about Ted's comment here, buddy?
See here, rate cut before U.S. election would add to my distrust of the system. Hoping Powell does not make really bad worse. And this is Ted. That's a great point because this is one of the tight ropes Jerome Powell is walking right now. The Fed is supposed to be apolitical, and overall, they do a pretty good job of that. Here's where Powell's between a rock and a hard place. He waited way too long to increase rates when inflation was taking off, and even once he did increase rates, they still left quantitative easing in place for another 5, 6 months, which was churning more money into the system. Well, that was a hit to his reputation. Well, now he doesn't want to be too late when it comes time to drop rates, but they want to maintain this illusion is too strong of a word, but not by much. This
Mhm.
illusion of being apolitical. So, but they are going to be influenced by politicians and politics because they are put up for this job and approved by Congress, right? So he's trying to walk this tightrope, and if he leaves rates high too long, that's going to hurt Biden. It's going to hurt the economy. Now it's going to hurt Biden's reelection chances. If he lowers them too soon, or lowers them before the election, I should say, then that's going to help Trump. And Jerome Powell is well on record of not liking Donald Trump. So,
Mhm.
and they had their clashes when Trump was in office previously. So there's personalities in there, lots of big egos. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out while trying to maintain confidence in the system. And as we know, during the fourth turning, which we were in the middle of, people do not have trust in the system. So that's an awesome point, and it's yet another tightrope the whole system really is trying to walk. And we can look at the elections that occurred in Europe over the last week, and they don't trust the system.
No.
And in typical European fashion, when they feel angst, they go left because they want to be taken care of. So
Mhm.
Americans tend to run a little different when they get anxious, but it's just a cultural difference there. So uh, and then let me see, I can't remember if we hit this one or not. Moving too fast creates risk of inflation returning, and there's a historical record for that, right?
Yeah, I want to go back to your point the other day. I saw a meme and it said, "The right loves the country but hates the government. The left hates the country but loves the government." And I think
Mm,
that speaks to what you just said as far as people turning to the left because they're running toward the government for some sort of salvation.
sure, and
And
it's you
it's a
know
false god, man. It is a
oh,
false idol.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And but it's an easy one to fall for, right? Because
Hmm.
they'll come up with a program. Somebody will do something. Well, yeah, how's that working out for
I know,
Europe
man.
right now?
I know.
It's
Yeah.
it's not working out good at all.
If you haven't read Douglas Murray's amazing book, The Strange Death of Europe, I cannot recommend it enough. And it's just a fantastic treatise on how Europe got here and the mess that they're in. And I don't see it coming out any soon here. What's Alan say?
Let's see here. Let me see, I got to make it bigger because I don't have my cheaters on here. The tightrope is going to be especially difficult by stress from the administration, particularly with the crap storm that Biden is in at this time. And oh my goodness, is he ever in the middle of a storm right now?
Mhm.
If he realizes it. Um, and you're right, Alan, because that's yet another thing that has to be walked tightrope that has to be walked here because those inside the administration are going to be pushing hard for the Fed to to cut rates before the election. And the first one that the market is pricing in is actually September. 82% chance of one rate cut in September. So we'll see what.
82%. That's a very specific number.
Well, they so what there's bond futures prices, so you can get it down into three digits after the decimal point if you want to on that
Holy cow.
percentage based on that. So that's what the market's been on. Now, with that, Jerome Powell has a track record, almost 100% track record of giving the market what it expects.
Oh, yeah, of course he would.
So, and let's remember, Jerome Powell came out of private equity, and private
Hmm.
equity is that's big money. Okay, private equity is when companies, instead of going public, they are bought by a private equity firm that then privately sells those shares off to high net worth investors. And they use the stock market over the last decades has averaged 8% a year. Private equity averages 15%.
Damn.
Yeah. And that's where Powell came from. So that's his roots. And with, for all of us, wherever our roots are, that's the prism through which we see everything, right?
Well said.
So,
I've got some comments here. I want to welcome
yeah,
Dr. Gordon Botson onto the show from
awesome.
point number 1688 from Ohio. Mark over there in Australia. Good morning, Mark. He says, "Good morning, gentlemen. High interest rates are ruining everyone's ability to enjoy their lives. We don't care about the reasons for high interest rates."
Yeah, for sure. And this is hey, hang on a second. I got this hydro garden right next to me. It's making a lot of noise here. Hold on.
The old Hydra Garden. I need to ask Will this question here. Will,
Sure.
I'm not sure what Tony's talking about.
Yeah, so Wisconsin during COVID put up sidewalk ballot boxes. Exactly what he said. Basically mailboxes. And you'd go put your ballot in. I'm sure there was zero fraud there. None.
Don't get it,
Um,
man.
yeah, and the bird flu's coming out now, so we'll see how that works out. Yeah, it's I'm a big fan of in-person voting with an ID.
Yeah, I've talked about it on here many times. Tennessee has according to the websites, the most secure elections out there, and I tell you, it is. You know,
Hmm.
it is tight.
Yep, and Wisconsin, if you're in person, yep, you show your ID to the first person, they give you a little ticket, goes to the second person, and that first person verifies your home address on a ledger versus your ID.
Mhm. Yep.
And then the second person double checks that, and then you get your ballot as it
But all
should
that's
be.
for naught if they're going to just let you walk up and drop crap into a sidewalk ballot box.
Absolutely. And back to Mark's point, you know, He's absolutely right. That's the perception out there worldwide with interest rates, and it's making people's lives hard for sure. Let's also remember inflation is the silent tax.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. And we're gonna dig a little bit in the 70s today, Mark. Mainly the cars and the music because they were better then. We might even touch on some economic points as well. And it kind of well, I wasn't planning on going there, but let's talk a little bit how the 70s set up the 80s, 90s, and 2000s,
Mhm.
and how that pain then caused that. So it's a yin and yang. It's a back and forth. It's the sine wave of economics. So let's press on here, and we'll get to that when we talk about that portion of it. Okay, and J Dog here goes on to say the Fed needs more data before rate cuts can begin. So in other words, I'm reading that as he wants to see more of this disinflation.
Mhm.
So, and that needs more data points, right? He's going to need to see that drive down even more over time. So,
Yeah.
and let's remember, it's not just interest rates as well; it's also quantitative tightening right now. They're sucking about $40 billion a month out of the U.S. economy to also tighten this up. So it's not just where the interest rate is; it's also the quantitative tightening. And last time they it talked a lot about adjusting rates. He went, now we're not going to adjust rates, but we're going to back quantitative tightening off from, I believe it was 60 billion a month to 40 billion a month. Okay. Well, that had an effect on that. That was less money coming out of the economy. And therefore, that is the equivalent effect of a rate cut, right?
Mhm.
So if you say our interest rates are 5.25% now, plus 40 billion a month in quantitative tightening, I don't know the exact number. Let's just say that makes an equivalent of 6% interest rates. Okay. Well, if you back the quantitative tightening out, then that would maybe have the effect. Let's say you took it all out, and then you
Mhm.
go from an effective 6% interest rate to 5.25. Well, us people out here don't feel that, but who does feel that is the banking industry. And then when they loosen lending standards, make it easier to get a loan, that does affect us out here in the economy. But again, it takes time, and there's no headlines with it.
No.
There is on CNBC and things like that, but out there and out there in the New York Times or fill in the blank USA Today, it'll be on page 4 of the financial section, and nobody but geeks like me read it. So, all right. So if we go on to the next one here, brother. All right. So this ties into Mark's comments here. So this is CPI, inflation rate from the Bureau of
Mhm.
Labor Statistics. This goes back all the way back to 1970, and it goes up through about 1988 or so. Okay. So the important part I want you guys to see is look around 1972 there. See how we had disinflation there, brother?
Mhm.
And if you look on that chart, it got down to about 4%. Okay. You also notice, just for clarification here, on this chart, it only goes up to about 11%, even though we know at the time inflation was reported much higher than that. This is using the new formulas since they've changed them twice, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. So this is adjusted down for the current way of calculating CPI.
And I hope
Right?
everybody caught what you're saying there. The because CPI, Consumer Price Index, for those that don't obla, has been changed. CPI is just a basket of goods,
Mhm.
and I want to say the executive branch has a say in what those goods are. Am I wrong in that?
Yes, BLS is part of the executive branch, and I'm
Mhm.
sure that nobody in the BLS would be influenced by an election cycle.
Yeah, so the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they decide what goes in that CPI basket,
Mhm.
and if the trend is not their friend, they can choose to remove some things and put new things in that basket to artificially manipulate the percentage. So that's what you're telling us essentially here with this number. They use today's current CPI data to go back in time and
Mhm.
change this curve because it otherwise would have looked more like a hockey stick, I would imagine.
Well, the curve actually looks the same as the numbers on the right-hand side. Where right now it's saying
Ah,
it topped out about 12%. I think it was actually like 15, 16, somewhere in
okay.
there.
Yeah.
Okay. So the shape is the same. So let's concentrate on that because, as you said, the trend is your friend until it's not. So let's look at what happened here. You'll see that the inflation rate was started to drop there in about, it was 72-ish. It's coming down, coming down, coming down. Well, there was something that happened in 72, and that was Nixon wanted to get reelected. So as this was going down, Nixon called then chairman of the Federal Reserve, Arthur Burns, to the White House. And as the historical record says, he summoned him to the White House, even though he doesn't work for Nixon or the executive branch, and said, you need to lower rates. And you need to do it right now because I want to get reelected. And Arthur Burns capitulated. He started lowering rates. Well, at that point, after a number of years of people being used to what is now would be about 6% inflation. So let's think about that. Almost double what it is now. And people had that for years. So they were used to that. So inflation started going down. Sure, everybody was breathing a sigh of relief, but it's still entrenched in your brain. Just like you see people out there now, right? It's getting entrenched out there. And this is one of J-Dog's things. He doesn't want that inflation mentality to become entrenched. So when this starts going down, Nixon's putting pressure on Burns to cut rates because that'll make Nixon more popular and help him get reelected. What people are expecting inflation. So when the interest rates went down, it got easier to get a loan and it was easier to afford to borrow money. They went out and borrowed a whole lot of money. And so then that started putting money back into the economy and driving demand up while supply stayed relatively the same. And then inflation took off starting to 74. The first thing I want to point out here is this did not happen in a month or a quarter.
Right.
It took a couple years. And you can see if you imagine about where 72 is, they started printing that money or relaxing the interest rates, I should say. It took over a year for it to really filter through everything and start to take off. Same way when they did all the COVID, the stimmy checks and all the other programs, brother, inflation didn't take off for over a year, right? So then we're looking at, people don't stop and think about this stuff. And anybody who brings it up early on is a conspiracy theorist, right? So
but also, man, what plays in? Because I think Nixon took us off the gold standard in 71. Does that have any play in this at all, or does that set the groundwork for what was to come?
I think Nixon taking us off the gold standard plays into this, but on an even longer lag because the bankers and stock market guys realized immediately that this was going to mean increased government spending because they were going to be unsaddled with the restriction of the gold standard. But again, that took months and years to really get going in the system.
Okay.
I don't think the regular person understood, but by the same token, the lags are so long that the general public doesn't really put that together. Same as the COVID spending. I was out there talking to friends. Oh man, inflation's coming. And they're like, 6 months later, they're like, see, nothing happened. I can't wait.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
and I tell you, I love how you keep referencing indirectly psychology.
Oh, absolutely.
And it takes a long time for people to get their head wrapped around what's going on because it's a lot of little independent actors out there doing things, and the way their brain processes this information.
Absolutely, and the lags are so long, and especially now. I'm guessing back then, but even more so now. With the 24-hour news cycle and the division within the country now, nobody really puts that together. You don't see like any mainstream commentators go out there. Well, if you remember, 22 months ago, this happened. It's causing this now. No, everything's all about the 24-hour news cycle now. And in fairness, I'm sure it was much the same back then.
Yeah. So Eric, I want to welcome some folks on before we get much further here because there's some great comments too. I'd love to hear you address. Will Eric says, "Good morning from Missouri, coin number 909." Alan Kelly says the early to mid 1970s were the glory days of gas lines at the pump, high prices for that time, and if you remember the end of the Vietnam War.
Yes.
What does Ted say?
Oh, Pittsburgh was a dismal place in the 70s. Economic woes. We are faced again with consequences of prolonged federal overspending. Yep, and I vaguely remember the gas lines in the 70s, evens and odds, right? So whatever number your license plate ended in, it was evens and odds. So that was when you could go fill up at the gas pump, and Pittsburgh was falling apart in the 70s, and it was all part of the financial when things slowed down, the steel industry took a hit, right?
And that's what killed. It's part of what killed off those beautiful old Mopar classics was all this gas line crap, and those beautiful cars got like 8 to 9 miles to the gallon if you're lucky.
Yeah, and some of them got gallons to the mile. So, so yeah, so this all plays into it, and then look what that caused for. What you guys are alluding to, that economic strife caused political strife. You know, let's remember Carter gave us the misery index. The misery index is unemployment rate plus inflation rate was the misery index, and people were deeply dissatisfied with everything. You know, we were going to lose to the Russians if there was a war. Yeah, I can remember where I grew up down in the Quad Cities, Moline, Illinois, and everybody was leaving. That's farm implement country. You know, when interest rates are high and the economy's slow, it's pretty hard to sell combines and tractors, right? Yeah. And there was bumper stickers all over town. I remember it vividly. With the last person leaving, please turn off the lights.
Yeah, that's why. And then of course you have the Reagan era, and I'm seeing that chart kind of you're heading us toward there. I think, Will, and you know, hit that commercial he did. It's morning again in America. Just saying it, I got to chill because I remember that feeling. I mean, I was just a kid. You were just a kid, but at the same time, I intuitively knew what he meant. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely. It was a time of great optimism after his election in 1980, and Reagan was a great leader, but he also caught a little bit of a wave too. Let's be honest, from an economic standpoint.
Well, so did Bill Clinton, for that matter.
Absolutely, he did.
He caught the wave that Reagan created.
Yep, for sure. So as we press on this, let's get up to what did Rush call him? Magnus. If anybody can remember, let me know. Rush had a name for Reagan. I forget. It was a Roman sounding name. I forget it now, obviously. So anyway, so inflation goes up, peaks in about 1975 there, and starts coming down because they did start raising rates. Arthur Burns realized his mistake and pointed a finger in the general direction of the White House and started raising rates and slowly got control of inflation again. And it started coming down. What'd they do? They relaxed rates again because we're on the right trend. Well, it was still in people's heads. Inflation, inflation, inflation. Because that was all that was on the news. I can remember as a little boy laying on the living room carpet floor watching the news and hearing Walter Cronkite talk about the price of coffee compared to a year ago. It's what was on the news every day because it was impacting everyone's lives. And then when rates got down a little bit lower, what happened? People, through the psychology that you bring up, went right back out and did it again. Okay. And inflation took off. Ronaldus Magnus. Thank you, Derek. Appreciate that. And inflation took off again. And you'll see it peaked in about 1981 for the last time until post-COVID. Okay. So now as those rates are coming, as that CPI, as that inflation rates coming down from 1980 all the way through 2021, interest rates went down at the same time all the way through there. There were spikes here and there, but every time there was a crisis of any type, rates went down. They had the room to do that because they started at 18% interest rates back in 1980. So there's a lot of room to cut rates through there. We lost that room going into COVID because we were already at whatever it was. I think it was like 1% as we went into COVID, maybe even lower, maybe half a point. So we're not looking at, that right now is not the same as when Reagan took over because Reagan had room to maneuver in there, right? Right now we don't have that. And that's part of what I think J-Dog's doing here is he's giving himself room to maneuver because typically when there's a crisis of some sort, a financial crisis, economic crisis, interest rates drop by 4%. Well, if you're not above 4%, then what?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So the part of it here is he's setting himself up to be able to respond to the next crisis, which will come. It's inevitable. It always happens. Right. Okay. So anything on that one, brother?
No, not at all.
Okay. So this one is, this drives J-Dog. This drives Jerome Powell right here. The man on the left, nobody knows who that is for the most part. It's Arthur Burns. Okay. And he was quite the character. I was actually watching some stuff on him yesterday. The style at the time was for men to part their hair on the side. So he went down the middle.
Right.
At that point in the 70s, everybody was smoking cigarettes. He was still smoking a pipe. There's tons of pictures of him smoking a pipe, even in congressional hearings, which I find funny now in today's society.
Mhm.
So is he going to be Arthur Burns, or is he going to be the gentleman on the right, Paul Volcker?
I
And
know what he wants to be.
yep, and the reason we should care about that is because what J Dog wants his legacy to be affects each and every one of us.
Mhm.
And if you go back and listen to what Jerome Powell has said in the past, he keeps saying this phrase, keeping at it. We will keep at it till the job is done. We will be keeping at it until we get inflation under control. And when he says the historical record shows there's danger in lowering rates too soon, he's referring to Arthur Burns lowering rates under the pressure from President Nixon.
Mhm.
So it all ties in. Matter of fact, I've mentioned it a number of times before. Jerome Powell has been made sure he was seen in public carrying Paul Volcker's book in his hand.
Mhm.
So he's telling you exactly what he's going to do.
It's a subtle message, huh?
Yeah,
Ted says in 1980, the U.S. was largest creditor nation, now debtor nation. Very different times.
very different times. Yes, think about when a person is on one side or the other of that ledger, how life feels and how debt traps and forces people to make short-term decisions that even when they know they're the bad long-term decision, you got to survive this week and this month, right?
That's right.
So the fourth thing that old J Dog brought up here, budget deficit is very large and unsustainable. Duh, right?
Yeah, but what's he going to do about it?
Well, he can't do a thing about it.
Mm.
And the one area where Powell does a really good job is anytime he's asked about the budget deficit or the national debt, even more specifically, he will say the Fed does not get involved in political decisions. We merely set monetary policy. And this is about the most direct I've ever seen him be on this. And this is not a quote. I'm sure he talked around it quite a bit. But this is what he's getting at. And it is unsustainable at this interest rate because that matters. If we're running 0% rates,
yeah,
right? If we're running 0% interest rates, you can afford a lot more debt, whether that's you, me, or the government. Right. So if we go on to the next chart there, brother.
Well, let's get to Mark. What do you think about Mark's comment there, Will?
Yes, very, very good point. We talked about that. I believe it was the last show, Rich. Mark says, in his opinion, international shipping is causing most of the inflation. International shipping that is owned by billionaires. Yes, it is. And I agree. What was that? What was it that from Shanghai to Europe in last week's show, Rich? It went from 6,000 for a 40-foot container to 12,000, something like that, 14,000.
Yeah, 2x increase or something like that.
And
more,
so we're gonna feel that. It's gonna take some time to filter in there, right? Because those contracts are at least 90, if not 180 days out. So those are the new contracts being brought in, and so it takes time for that to filter through to your price there at the retail store. And it's going to take time to filter through the other way, and it goes down slower than it goes up, as always.
Eric, let's take Eric's point here too. He says, I think the bank's derivatives are something that's very concerning. If you look into that, these banks could fold in at any time. Is that something to worry about?
Yes. Yes.
Unequivocal answer. I love it. That's why people keep coming back to our show, Will.
And that resounding explanation I gave afterwards as well. So the
unless you're a GSIB and then you're fine. But
yeah, exactly. And GSIB is globally systemic important bank, too big to fail is how you actually pronounce that. The derivatives are definitely out there. They're now called CLOs, collateralized loan obligations, whereas before during the housing crisis they were CDSs and CDOs. They just renamed them. It's the same thing. And they've all got the bets going back and forth. I believe it's Rocket Mortgage and another one. Now, if your income is less than twice the poverty line, somewhere in there, something like that, you can now qualify for a 0% down mortgage.
Oh boy, what could go wrong
Yeah,
with that?
nothing. Yeah, right. So we're doing the same thing, and that's just they're trying to get some more loans out there, churn the book, so to speak. Um, and that's not the sign of a healthy housing market, right? So
No.
we can start seeing the cracks in here, right? So and this is what we were talking about here: U.S. government spending. This is the fiscal year 2024 top 10 spending by category and agency. So Social Security, Medicare. Anybody going to realistically talk about cutting those in an election year?
Well, I don't know. President Biden in his recent thing said they defeated Medicare, and I see it doesn't look like we
Uh,
defeated Medicare if it's at what 14% of government spending.
if we're gonna do a show on the debate, brother, it's gonna think Indian one because I'm gonna need a cocktail for that one.
Oh God.
It's just it's sad to watch, really. And I know you've
It's
had
elder
family
abuse.
members go. I know you had family members go through that, and I have too. And it's yeah. I'm just gonna leave that there before I go off on a 10-minute rant.
Amen.
So, Social Security, Medicare. I know Trump's kind of touched on this a little bit, but nobody's going to seriously talk about cutting either one of these programs if they want to get elected. It's just the
Mhm.
way it is. Okay. What's number 3 on the list there, brother?
You say the next three?
No, what is the third one?
What does it say? Net interest?
Net interest. That's interest on the
Ooh,
national debt. Third largest thing in the budget, guys.
damn.
Now, in fairness, it's tied with health and national defense. And I
But
think right now, I think it's actually slightly above national defense. So let's think about that. We're spending more money to service the debt than we are to protect the country.
and people will tell you, well, that's not a problem because we own the printing press. We can print more money. But what is the problem with printing more money?
Printing more money is more money in the system, and then we will long for the days of 3% inflation. We'll go back to 9, 10, 12 real fast. And
Yeah.
then it takes even more pain to pull that back out of the system when it goes back up. And you can look back to the 70s to learn that. If they would have just kept their foot on the brake in the early 70s, they would have been cured right then. But politics and psychology took over.
Yeah, and you said to pull it out of the system via taxes. Hell, you're already at 40%. That's how you get,
Yeah.
you get a revolution.
Yeah.
I don't know how much more people can take because I hear the rumblings. Now that's anecdotal, but we went to war. This is another important distinction when you talk about the Revolutionary War. It's not that our ancestors fought for your freedom; they killed for it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a whole nother problem.
Yep.
And keep trying to pull it out.
Yep.
Michael Gentili is on. Good morning, sir.
Yeah. David Walker. Michael, I assume you're referring to his IOUSA video way back when. It's like 2013 that came out.
Mhm.
Still a great watch. If you do a search on YouTube for IOUSA, you will long for the days of the national debt levels he was talking about. He was comptroller of the U.S. and he resigned because he refused to sign the books for the country anymore because they were fraudulent.
Mm,
Yeah. Powerful
yeah.
video. The full version's about an hour. They've got a shortened down one's about 30 minutes. Well worth the time to watch.
Yeah,
Because
Comptroller General of the United States from 1998 to 2008. Wow.
and it was a couple years after that. He went on a tour of the US giving speeches about this. And of course, as soon as the financial crisis was over, it fell on deaf ears after that. But he
Mhm.
was right. You can look at what he said was going to happen, and it happened. And there was 4 types of areas where we have debt, and the
Mhm.
one he didn't talk about as much is the one I think is most important. That's the leadership debt.
Oh,
We
really?
don't have any leadership.
Mhm.
No, who's out there willing to make the hard decisions right now?
Nobody.
Nobody. So that's how we get into this point where tied for third in the U.S. national budget is paying interest on the debt. Now that, in fairness, when rates do come down, and we'll talk about it in a moment, what I think it's going to take for rates to come down, that number will go down. It will plummet, as a matter of fact. When rates go back down, I think we're going to see zero at some point here. That net interest will go basically to zero. And they'll be like, hoo, look at us. We won. Well, yeah, until we talk about what it takes to get there.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
All right. So that's me, Mr. Sunshine, here this morning. All right.
Always. Speaking of sunshine, look at this one.
Yeah. This is the national debt as a percent of GDP. And you can see what happened there from 2000 to 2024. Right. And you can really see what happened from about, if you take the midpoint of that, about 2008, 2009, right, up to today.
Yep.
That's what kept us out of a true financial crisis after the housing crash.
And look at that giant hockey stick there in the late 40s. That's World War II.
Yes.
And we're fighting a multi-theater war, not near peer war, a peer war for the future of the world. And look what it is relative to now. We're not fighting that war now.
Yep.
We're just pissing away money.
Yep. And ask yourselves, I mean, we're told, by the current administration, it's a thriving economy, right? Then why in the name of everything good and holy in the world are they spending money like this to prop up an economy?
Yeah.
Right? Why? If the economy is so great, it should be just the opposite. You should be able to be pulling money out of the system and lowering interest rates, right? If things are going great. So why is this? I'm sorry, I apologize. You should be able to raise interest rates. Same way. I mean, let's remember too, guys. Keep this in perspective. When I was looking at my first house looking to buy my first house around year 2000, actually probably 98. Actually, it was 98. Mortgage interest rates were about where they are now, and they were considered low. I can remember Alan Greenspan, chairman of the Fed back then, debating between 5.5% and 5.75%, and the economy was thriving.
When did you buy your first house?
1998.
Yeah, I bought 95 or 96. Same thing. I had like a 7.25, and it was like, ooh, I can't believe we qualified for 7.25.
Yep. And of course, the yin and yang the houses were a lot cheaper because rates were still in that range, right? Cheap money makes expensive things. Think college.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. As I'm getting ready to put 2 through college. Oh,
good luck.
Yeah. So, and then let's go back to that chart just one more time there, brother.
Sure.
Look now, this is from the CBO, Congressional Budget Office. They are very nonpartisan. They're not always right, but they're pretty darn good. Okay. Look what they project the debt to do between 2025 and 2050. And this is now, in fairness to them, they have to make this assumption, right? This is no wars, no recessions, no pandemics, because there's no way somebody can forecast when that's going to happen, right? So this is a baseline. Now throw anything bad in the world into this on top of it, it only gets worse. And if somebody's got an idea how things can be better than that without any of those bad things ever happening, hey, I'm all ears.
And of course they're going to happen, man. Yeah, every indicator is there. So,
yep. So, yeah. So this is I think that's one of the reasons Powell's keeping rates as high as they are, because he needs the room to maneuver when something happens. So, all right, on to this one here. 4% unemployment is still a very low unemployment rate. So as a 4% unemployment rate, is that good or bad, high or low, right? It's all relative to what it's been recently. Well, it's higher than it was, right? But I can remember unemployment rate, not talking about COVID because that was a one-off, but I can remember unemployment rates of 8-9% ish back in the 70s, right? People were having a very hard time getting jobs and a lot of strife out there. So 4% is still very low unemployment, but where does it tip over, so to speak? Where does low become high, right? I mean, if we were at 10% and went to 4%, we're like, this is pretty darn good. But if we're at 1% and went to 4%, this is terrible, correct? I see Giles on from the Philippines. Welcome, sir. Good to see you. So let's dig into it from an economist standpoint, from the way Jerome Powell looks at that. If we go to the next page, all right. U.S. economy adds 206,000 jobs in June. Unemployment rate rises to 4.1%. Okay. So the unemployment rate unexpectedly climbed to 4.1%. So how does the unemployment rate go up when we add 206,000 jobs? It's because more people came into the workforce. So, but I've preached this a number of times. The downwardly revised gain of 218,000 in May, which was cut sharply from the initial estimate of 272. So
They've
when
done
they
that
just keep,
almost every quarter, haven't they?
they've done that every month for over a year.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
So
Michael Gentili's comment is exactly what I was thinking when I heard the 4%. And he talks about what is the labor participation rate. Government
yep.
loves to play with that unemployment rate.
Yes, they do. And that's exactly what happened. The labor force participation rate went up more than jobs were added. And therefore, the unemployment rate goes up. Now, we'll see what really happens when my prediction, this 206,000 gets revised downward as well.
Uh-huh.
Okay, because it's what has been happening. So, smart money would be betting on that, I think. So, what's this top part say there, brother?
The household survey also showed a decrease of 28,000 in full-time workers and an increase of 50,000 in part-time workers.
Okay.
Yeah, that they are only wanting to hire part-time workers. Well, why are they wanting to do that?
Well, they don't have to pay benefits, right? Gives more
Exactly.
flexibility from the employer standpoint. I used to be an employer. Part-time workers, I'm not promising them any certain amount of hours per week.
Nope.
Right? Full-time workers, I made a commitment to. I'm going to give you this many hours. But the part-timers, I can call them off. I can be like, yeah, next week's not looking real busy, so go and take the week off, so on and so forth. The reason I circled the word survey in this one, brother, is survey means they actually called and talked to real people.
Ah.
Anytime you read survey, somebody at the BLS picked up a phone and called people. And they answered the phone and actually talked to them. So anytime you see survey, I give that a little more weight. Is actually talk to somebody. Okay. So the bottom part here, brother, what's that have to say?
Though June job creation topped expectations, it was due in large part to a 70,000 surge in government jobs. Also, healthcare, a consistent leader in the sector, added 49,000, while social assistance contributed 34,000 and construction was up 27,000.
Okay, so let's break that down. 70,000 government jobs. Where's the money come from to pay those people?
I know.
Oh, yeah, that's right. By adding to the national debt, because we're not bringing enough taxes in to cover what they're spending to begin with. So, any addition to that, by definition, has to be this increased debt, right?
Why don't we just give everybody a government job?
Yeah, don't get me started, bro. Don't get me started. Okay.
Isn't that called socialism or communism or something? I don't know.
It's some sort of ism. Yeah. It sure as shit ain't capitalism, though. Pardon my French.
Hey, my
Okay.
brother Jeff is on. It says 4% is almost 7 million people.
True. Very true. And we're going to dig into that a little bit here in just one of the next slides here. Okay. Also,
Oopsies.
one job, Brown. One job.
I know,
Go back. I still got stuff to
Worthless.
blather on that one. Okay. All right.
You should fire me, Will, be honest with you.
I'm just going to cut your pay. So
I go from 0 to 0.
Zero. Exactly. Also, healthcare, a consistent leader by sector, added 49,000. And let's remember, healthcare can be affected by government spending through Medicare and Medicaid. All right. So if they go, hey, we're gonna give you some more money if you do these certain things, then you're going to see more healthcare workers. Also, you're going to see more healthcare workers because the boomers are getting older. Us Gen X guys are getting older, right? Now, the boomers are the big one. That's the big generation, of course. Okay. So I think you're going to consistently see healthcare employment go up until the boomers as a generation peak and then start down in their numbers. Okay. Social assistance contributed 34,000. I honestly have no clue what that means. I don't see how social assistance adds jobs, unless that's welfare workers, people administering those programs. I honestly don't know, and I couldn't find it out. And in fairness, construction was up 27,000. That's a good thing. Construction going up is a good thing. So that's just all there is to it. But
it's a very good thing, but I don't.
So if we go back to it, added 208,000 jobs, we strip out 120,000 of that. Now we're down to 80-ish, right? That's not great. Only adding 80,000 jobs in a month. 80,000. The economy itself adding 80,000 jobs, because the rest is either directly or highly correlated to government spending. In this case, deficit spending. That's not sustainable. Not at these interest rates when we're already spending, tied for third. You know, third largest budget item is interest expense.
Mm-hmm.
So something to keep in mind, guys. So under the hood, these job numbers are not great. Okay. So on to the next one here, brother, and let's talk about where we started this at is what is full employment? There is a definition for it because economists love definitions, right? So full employment is an economic situation in which all labor resources are being used in the most efficient way possible. Full employment embodies the highest amount of skilled and unskilled labor that can be employed within an economy at any given time. Now, that does not mean zero. If you'd read the bottom part there, brother, we'll see what number they put on it.
Okay. An unemployment rate of 5% is often considered full employment. Oh, you're talking about the from JDog?
Yes.
Okay. From JDog's perspective, there's
No,
a lot of
this is Investopedia. This is the standard number for full employment.
It's 5%.
Yes. 5% unemployment is considered full employment.
Okay.
So good.
From JDog's perspective, there's a lot of room to let unemployment go higher to drive demand and therefore inflation lower.
Yes. So a 5% unemployment rate is by the standard of economists. 5% unemployment is considered full employment. We would think of, as laymen, we would think of as 0% unemployment is full employment. It's not in their terms. 5% unemployment is considered full employment. And what that means within this is those who want, it goes on to say here, those wanting full-time work should be able to find a full-time job, even if it's not in their preferred occupation, which we know now those who, especially coming out of the liberal arts, I'm only going to work in this area and I'll just sit here and be unemployed otherwise. Right.
Yeah.
But so let's think about this. Our unemployment rate right now is 4.1%. Well, full employment is 5% unemployment. So if you look at that from an economist and JDog standpoint, he can let it go up another 0.9%. Unemployment can go up 20% from here, and that would be at 4.95%, right? So he can, from the standard definition of full employment, we're not even close to having a problem yet.
Yeah.
It can go up 20% from here, and he's going to go, it's still full employment. So he's got to get to, pick your number, 6, 7% unemployment, 8%, whatever it is, before it's like, okay, now we have a problem.
Right.
And what's the surest way to bring inflation down? Have people not have jobs to spend money. That brings inflation down real fast.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But then that goes back to when that CPI comes down like that, then he has room to lower the interest rates, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the hard part is catching the falling knife right at 2%. You can either take forever to get there, which we're on track for. He's talking 2026 of the current way of doing this, right? That takes a long time to get down there. And the danger of it taking a long time to get down to 2% is the inflation mentality is very entrenched in the public. So there's a danger there too, because then you have to be very slow to relax the restrictions on money supply through interest rates and getting rid of quantitative tightening. These people are ready to jump on the first cheap money they see to go buy the stuff before prices go back up again. So he's trying to walk all of these, right? Or you can let it go down really fast through driving unemployment up, but then you get a crisis. So pick your poison.
All right.
It's kind of like COVID, right? Pick your poison. Do you want a depression, or do you want to have all the inflation and now all the problems are going to go on for better part of a decade afterwards?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we talked about that back during that, the trolley dilemma, which one you throw, you're gonna kill people either way, whatever you do. So try to do the lesser of two evils. What's Alan say here?
Isn't the stat where increases of part-time workers convert to new job creation numbers for positive job numbers? Yes, a job created can be part-time or full-time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where this happens. I can remember, I think it was when Clinton was president. The right at the time was decrying how, all these new jobs created were part-time jobs. So, if a person gets two part-time jobs, that's two jobs created, but really it's one full-time equivalent. But
Mhm.
nobody ever puts it in that perspective when they're reporting these stories, right?
Nope.
So nobody says full-time equivalent. They just go, this many jobs got created. Yeah, but are more people employed?
Right.
So yeah. What's Ted say
Uh,
there?
Ted says patriotic duty of us boomers to murder ourselves, question mark. LOL. Nazi unproductive ears comes to mind. Confident there are elderly politicians in the U.S. would order half rations, deny medical care. Fear not.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I didn't put it in the show, but there's a Wall Street Journal article out there. Um, Basically, a lot of what's keeping the economy afloat right now is boomer spending,
Mhm.
because the boomers as a generation have a lot of wealth,
Yes, they do.
because they came into their prime earning years just as interest rates started going down, and every asset class has been up since 1982, every single one. So it didn't really matter where they put their money. They didn't have to pick the right spot or have a good financial advisor to get them in the right spot. They could pick literally anything,
Yeah.
right? I mean, gold was what, 200 an ounce in 1980, somewhere in that range. And now we're at what, 23, 2400
Mhm.
there. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So put your money in there. It didn't do well at all compared to, say, real estate or stocks or bonds or you name it, but you made money. You went up 10x. So that's nothing to scoff at. So they got a lot of money to spend. There was, in that article, they were talking about Sun City in Texas. It's a 5,500 acre planned community for elderly people. There's pickleball courts, so surgeons stay in business, and there's fitness centers and community centers and all that sort of stuff. And they're out there having dance parties, showing pictures of these older folks out there dancing, having a good time, and awesome for them.
Yeah.
They earn this money. I mean, there's never an easy time to make money. They had an easier time than, say, the people in the Depression, for sure, right? But there's never any easy angst-free time to make money out there, right?
No.
So they've earned it. Go spend it. Enjoy life. But that's a big part of what's keeping certain parts of the economy up right now, is their spending, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at the gold spot price now. You've got me thinking about it. It's
Uh-huh.
23.87.
Okay.
I mean, just as perspective, I mean, if you go back to a lot of us on here remember September the 11th, gold was around $272.
Yeah.
That's almost a 10x
Yeah.
return,
That's probably
which is
8x, somewhere in there.
insane.
Yep. But now, keep that in perspective. Look what the stock market did since then.
Yeah.
So
But has it been 10x? I mean, I don't know.
oh, well beyond that.
Okay.
Yeah, well beyond. Matter of fact, give me a second. I can tell you. Bear with me 1 second, guys. Let's see.
As you're looking up that, I'll read this here. Ted says
Okay.
boomers competing on Facebook over travel and food, but also spending on adult peeps living home education. Yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah.
That's a true statement.
So let me see. I'm gonna get my chart to go all the way back, and then after that I have to math in public. So bear with me.
Oh boy, that could be
Yeah.
dangerous.
Oh my gosh. So you carry the 1, divide by the square root of pi. 2001 is 982. So I'm sorry. Wow, I was off. 5.6x increase in the S&P since 2001.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yep.
I couldn't imagine it being 10.
Yeah. So
Oh,
yep, you're
no.
right. It was less. So yeah, you go all the way across there. So, and
I
I thought
love
you
this
would like
one.
this one. What's this one have to say, brother?
Comfort is the worst addiction. That's from Marcus Aurelius. And if you haven't read Meditations, I highly encourage you. I gave my children all a copy. Here you go. You need
Yep.
and you don't need to sit down and just read it. Take chunks at a time and then let it marinate. Let those
Yep.
ideas and roll around your head, because he's absolutely right. There's no growth inside of comfort.
Right.
You know, the
Absolutely.
bean sprout that crashes out of its shell and reaches toward the sun endures a lot of pain. Same thing as the bird could sit in the egg and just be comfortable and warm there, but you gotta burst out of the comfort. if you want to achieve
Yeah.
anything. So,
And I'll throw out there, the comfort can be any number of ways, right?
mhm,
Maybe someone who's comfortable in a job that isn't, you know, there's better opportunities out there to provide for the family. Well, that's discomfort, right?
mhm.
I'm still remodeling this room. It's been going on since November. Okay,
Should have
I
hired
think
somebody, but that's a whole nother conversation.
well, but that would have been comfortable, right? Right. I wouldn't have
I
learned.
agree.
I've
I,
laid
I,
down before this is over. I'll put down like 1,200 square feet of tile. Hopefully tomorrow I will actually finish the tiling finally. But I've been uncomfortable more than a few times. You know.
well, and that's my problem. I'll be completely candid with you. This is something that I think about daily, and that is I have created a very comfortable life. I think you have to be careful in that you don't create your own cage,
Hmm.
because that's exactly what it can be.
Yep.
You can look, oh, look how great it is here. Got a swimming pool and a hot tub, and everything's just fantastic. And why shouldn't I enjoy the fruits of this and just hang out and do nothing? Well, there's a huge danger to that. And
Absolutely.
whether that is like strapping on your rig and going to shoot an IDPA match and find out where you are there, or going
Hmm.
to an introductory BJJ class or something like that, where you're going to test yourself. And we
Yep.
can make a lot of excuses why that's not a good thing. I mean, ask me how I know. I'm the king of making excuses to enjoy my comfortable life. So I love that slide.
Well, that's human nature, right?
Hmm.
Because the mind wants to be protected.
Hmm.
And when the body is uncomfortable, the mind's going, "Whoa, don't do bad things to the body because I want to survive." Right.
Right.
So it's that ability to push through. Now I don't work out nearly as hard as I used to. Part of that is I can't recover like I used to now that I'm in my
Hmm.
50s. But my old adage was at least once a week I puke.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And yeah, that was my standard. I'd pick an exercise and just go till you puke. And it wasn't about, say I'm doing body weight squats, right?
Hmm.
So what if I do an extra 200? But it's that working through that discomfort, driving yourself through that discomfort, because when the fight comes, it's going to be uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? So it's that mental toughness side of it. It's not about, oh my gosh, I did 200 more and I puked. Well, that doesn't actually make you any stronger physically, right? I could have taken 5 minutes off and done 200 more squats and not puked, but it was that ability to push through.
Well, in the Marine Corps, you say train hard and fight easy, or the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. So there's a whole lot of metaphors out there. You pick yours, but I think Marcus Aurelius was on to something.
Absolutely was. What's Alan have to say there?
Alan says, hey, do it yourself work has its comfort of saving money and the satisfaction of what you have accomplished.
Very true. Yep. And
Very
I
true.
and I'm proud of the stuff that the family and I've done around the house here. We've done a lot around this house, and we've learned a lot too.
Mhm.
So, but is certainly been uncomfortable at times because we're
Oh, yeah.
we're dealing with this for months now. And but
Mhm.
you know, yeah, my drywall skills are much better now. Pulled a bunch of wire through the house, wired up new lights up here, laid down a bunch of tile, and been able to teach the kids a lot of stuff too. So, yeah. So take the hard way.
Yeah. And with that being said, Will, thank you for another fantastic show, man.
My pleasure,
Again,
sir.
you always
Happy to
bring
help.
it, brother.
Thank you. Happy to help
And,
out however I can.
and if you want to take us out, sir, go right ahead.
The fight's coming. Be ready.